Well, I have killed my first sander. That's always a milestone when you're building a boat or doing anything like this. You can see this is a DeWalt sander, not real impressed, but the bearing, the front bearing on it, you can see it kind of wallowed itself out and it ended up grinding the gears out. And this thing is full of metal flakes, so unfortunately I don't think she's going to be easily rebuildable unless I can get a new case for it. So bite the bullet and buy a new one, but again, that is one of those things that's always the milestone. We did it multiple times with elements, the first time with the aluminum boat, now we're doing it here again.
And 2 months in.
And 2 months in and probably 20 hours worth of use maybe?
Yep.
Yeah, not real impressed with this one, but we'll see.
After 8 years of the nomadic life, involving crossing oceans in a 34-foot Sabre, refitting an aluminum boat, and then taking that to the Arctic Circle, we're back at it again with a brand new build. This is Matt and I'm Jessica. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and join us every week as we start our newest project of building a 42-foot catamaran from the ground up.
It is time for us to fully strengthen up these hulls and get them ready for bulkheads to go on. So we've got the unidirectional out that we cut, oh my gosh, probably within the first week of the build. It's been waiting for this moment, sitting in the Viking. So now we have measured out from basically floor length down here, all the way across the other side. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, so we've come out with our measurement. We're going to roll out the unidirectional, get it ready to cut.
And there we go.
And there's our width to span the deck. And again, eyeballing these is okay because this one doesn't have to go like directly to the joint.
It is time for me to glove up right now so that my hand, the oils from my hand don't get on the deck as we're doing preparations. And look how nice and thick these are. I wore a set the other day when we were doing some filling. Did the whole thing, came off perfectly. Nice 9mm gloves, I'm enjoying this. Anyway, what I'm doing right now is the center line that Matt and I had marked before. I'm going off and actually marking the edge right now. Forgive my Imperial measurements. We're going off that line by about 5 1/8 inches, and so we'll just do that. We'll draw another line so that when we are laying the unidirectional down, we don't have to worry about trying to x-ray through it and see the center line. We just have to make sure that the edge of the glass runs along our new line. So that's my quick project right now.
Hold on, sugar, why you look so sad? Come on now, mama, ain't nothing here so bad. You got fast cars, movie stars, party on down the street with Mary Jane, good cocaine, plenty down there.
And speaking of both metric and imperial, do you like the nice merriment that we did here? And the only reason that the bottom part is done in imperial feet is because our really long tape measure, the flat one, is only an imperial. We still have to go ahead and get ourselves the metric one that can do like 30 meters. So yeah, just kind of mixing them back and forth right here. We are just about ready to begin today. We're getting all set up on the table here, and we're not going to do a wetting station here or up on deck. It's going to be easier just to roll the resin on as it's in place. So the first thing we're going to do is mix up a batch of thickened vinyl ester, and Matt's going to go over like any cracks or uneven surfaces on there and just make sure that it's flat. And we're going to do two kind of like separate areas. So he's going to do the furthest aft, and then we're going to kind of bounce to the midsection of the boat. let those harden a little bit, and then we'll go back to the aft and start rolling on the
Bounce back and
unidirectional.
forth. Unidirectional wants to lay perfectly flat and straight, so that's why we have to put so much effort into making sure the surface is perfectly even all the way across. There is some undulations that we see within the foam when it was infused, and so we got to fill in those little cracks. We did a quick coat before, but whenever you do that, it kind of settles down a little bit because I didn't overfill it. So now this is the penalty that we have to pay for not overfilling it and sanding it back, is gonna go through and do it again
Add
right
it again.
before.
Yep. So we're gonna get started on that. One thing I think we may have forgot to mention or kind of cover as we were doing the project is when we went to fill the center troughs here, as Matt said, it needs like a very, very level and smooth surface to get this unidirectional across. We don't want any dips. And because the seam that runs fore and aft on the boat where we bonded the two pieces of the bridge deck together does dip down, we needed to make that a level surface. So the other day we went through and we put our 1208 fiberglass on there. I think it was like a layer, 2 layers of it actually. And then we went through and smoothed the top with thickened resin, and Matt went through last night and then sanded it smooth so that now we have like that flat surface going all the way across the deck from one side to the other.
Still got skills to learn, but that's okay because we have a whole boat to build to prepare ourselves. And so the 2 areas that we're going to be doing first again is this bulkhead 9, very aft area here. And then we don't want to get that messed up by working on the next bulkhead, which runs right here. So we're going to jump from there to there, and then like back to here, and then up there.
The 5 areas we were planning to glass for will be home to the bulkheads, which will span all the way across our deck. The furthest forward is number 4 and creates the beginning of our lockers on the bridge deck, as well as the door to our shower within the owner's hull. Bulkhead 5 will be the forward edge of our salon and galley and also supports the mast. Then there's a bit of a span until bulkhead 6, which separates the salon from the cockpit. Bulkheads 8 and 9 are the aft beam where our cockpit bench will be, and some of the most important bulkheads in the boat.
Sure is getting late. Come on now, mama, don't you hesitate. Grab my hand, well we land. I got the champagne. We can knock it back, get on track, jump on, ride this thing. Double down, roll the dice, take off now, don't think twice. Hey, don't you wanna play? Say hey.
We are 1 down so far, and as you can see, we're skipping ahead to that forward bulkhead, and we're getting a little process down where Matt initially wets the area with just resin to get the surface ready, and then I go over it and matching up the edge of our widest piece, our 250 millimeters of unidirectional. I lay that out and just kind of like roll it onto the surface. Then Matt goes behind me and wets it out with our resin. I go on top of that and center our 200 millimeters. Again, Matt wets that. We put on the 150 millimeters, wet that, put peel ply on top, and then we repeat the process through all of the rest of the bulkheads.
All right, I think I'm ready now to start following you with the 200. Cool.
The reason for adding our layers of unidirectional fiberglass in these areas is to prepare the surface for where our bulkheads will lay. Once ready to install, they will sit in the middle of the unidirectional and be taped in with multiple layers of double bias fiberglass. The combination of these 2 fiberglasses together creates an I-beam an incredibly stiff and rigid structure, spreading the load transverse across the boat and preventing it from twisting. And the reason we're using 3 different widths of the unidirectional is to help the area transition from extreme rigidity to less rigid. Whereas if the multiple layers were all the same width, we'd be left with a hard spot, with one area that was incredibly rigid directly next to an area which had no extra support at all.
Oh, it's been a long day. Just gonna take a few seconds and lay on my back. We are on the very last strip right now, getting the peel ply on. Oh. And Matt has already gone through and checked the first set that we did. Started ripping a bit of that peel ply off. Things are hardening, curing well. And for the last few, we actually found a good rhythm where we would both kind of like roll out the unidirectional. Matt would take a scraper and make sure it's in place and get all those air bubbles out, so I was keeping it aligned, and then we would equally like take a side, coat it with resin, and then go through with the next layer and the next layer, and then we've both been adding peel ply. So a nice 6 hours in the tent today. Very successful, because that means these areas are getting prepped for bulkheads, which is what I am super excited for.
Is that it? No, that's not it. That's not it. There's bubbles. All right, I'll come over and help.
I forgot to mention, we've also been using this fin roller to smooth out both the unidirectional and the peel ply when they're going on. Mission complete. Time to head to the beach for a beer.
I still have standing to do.
You
I
can
have
take
to
a
do.
beer break.
No, I have to do that one up there.
Okay.
Maybe I will take a beer break.
I think a beer break is necessary.
Yeah, there's still a little bit of light left.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and then I'll come back to the tent.
Yep.
Do that tonight.
Because there's some healing home from our mini fridge. Even brought the cat in on the action.
Well, we decided to forego the beach because we wanted.
Too sunny.
It's too sunny for the beach. Because we wanted to have Georgie get outside for a chance, and for some reason she doesn't like the beach. She likes the fly bridge of the Viking, so yeah, why not? And that way we don't have to change our clothes, because we can be filthy on our own boat.
Bless you, kitty.
Finger in there.
Alright. Cheers.
Yay! Another successful day.
Only like 700 of them left. Hello there, everyone. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and it's question and answer time. I think last week's prodding did get more of you to ask questions because they have been bumped up from the week before. So thank you for that. We love hearing your thoughts on it and answering any questions you have about the build or the projects that we've just completed.
Well, as many questions as we feel like answering.
As many as we can. So of course the most prominent ones we do still try to respond to within the video, but it's also easy to then bring it up the next week and answer it for everybody because we know it's like a popular thing that I'm sure a lot of others are wondering about. And from last week's video when we were doing the measuring for the bulkheads and the spacing, and then Matt was doing the inserts for the unidirectional, as far as regards to the bulkheads, we did have a question of why were you making like these measurements? Did you decide to change it yourselves? And like why not stick with what the manufacturer gave you? When we actually those were changes based on updates from the manufacturers at Max Cruise.
So when they did our hulls and they put in these webbing pieces and did all this, again, they were trying to get this to us as soon as possible.
We were ready to start.
They were getting it ready in November, late November, early December, and at that point, that was the placement for all the bulkheads. Well, over the course of time between there and I think it was like the end of January, there was some tweaks that were made to it, bulkhead placement based on the engineering, some of the final engineering that went through, and just spacing for different things, and some of it's for CE, for the ISO for CE too. But they did do an update to that. So anyone else that is ordered one since is going to have...
You won't have to do that because yours will already have the changes made.
Yep, ours was just the early prototype, we'll kind of call it, kind of. And so things have gotten changed, and that was us going through with the newest update of the bulkheads, going through and changing it that way.
So that's the answer to that question. And there really wasn't much more within the spacing. A couple of people did bring up saying that, like green lasers are better than the red. We started with a green laser, we got it in the mail, and then we're like, oh, green holes, maybe we shouldn't, and we exchanged it for red. Who knows if the green would have worked, but we went with red anyway, and it's been okay.
It's been okay. We have a Bosch, and we have a Bosch professional one, which we can barely see. And then we have another one from some company I've never heard of before. I think it's like out of the Netherlands or something. But that one has done really well. It appears to be more accurate too. I've kind of tested on a few things, and it just seems like it's a better setup. So that's one we use primarily.
And then in the second part of the episode where Matt was taking those foam insert cutouts and getting them to lay across the seams where the bridge deck meets the hull to create like a nice level surface for when we put the unidirectional in. A few people were saying, we've seen you working with the table saw. Why didn't you, when you're trying to get the angle, just like put the blade on an angle and do one cut instead of taking your sander and kind of like grinding down areas? But that's because each area within the seam is like slightly different. We didn't have a general angle.
Yeah. Both sides are completely different too. And each position, there was basically only two of those that would have been even remotely similar to each other. Each one was individual. Part of it's because of the curve up area, and so I had to curve it and do some other things to make that fit. These are more just to bridge the gap so the unidirectional goes directly across, and for compression strength. That really is about what these are for. So we wanted a level flat surface top for that, something that was going to bond to well, which is the fiberglass is already on one end of that, was easier to bond to than the raw foam for us. So that was part of the reason for why we chose that direction. And that's basically it. There's a million different ways we could have done this, and that's just the way we chose. And it may have made it look more difficult in the video than what it actually was. It was just kind of eyeballing it and kind of, and then just hitting it with a grinder and making it fit.
It was one of those afternoons that I sent him to the tent because I was busy editing, and he just kind of like needed stuff to do. So.
Yeah, so it filled in, and filling in that gap below it was no big deal, so it didn't need to be absolutely perfect there. It just needed to be flush with the upper surface, so that was the idea.
So hopefully that answered a question from last week. Make sure to ask us any questions about this week where we did lay where we laid it down the unidirectional in preparation for the bulkheads, which is coming up next, and we're very excited for that.
Which you can kind of see behind you.
You can kind of see that we started them already, and if you watch our Patreon thank you next, you'll see that I'm standing in between a few of them. So make sure to stay tuned next week to watch that. It is time now for my new favorite part of the episode, where we get to give a big shout out to all of our patrons for, of course, making this possible. Without their support, there's no way that we could be doing this catamaran build right now. You all are such a great community, and we are so thankful to have you in our lives. And one of the small ways that we're able to say thank you in return is to display everybody's name here on the catamaran. And this is in one of our forward storage lockers. So this area is never going to get painted. It's never going to get covered over. Every time we go grab our sails out, go grab fenders, we're going to be reminded of the amazing people that got us to this point. So right now I have gotten to the point of the patrons that have been with us since we left Indiantown with the aluminum boat and traveled through the Caribbean and across the Atlantic Ocean back in 2018. So a great group that has been with us for 3 years now at least. I want to give a couple of shout outs. Sometimes I do add new names into the group just because they're important people that we want to give thanks to right away, and Alex Schweitzer is one of them. He is the yard manager here at Kentmorr. And if you remember the day that we received the container and had to do the unloading, he was such a hero. We could not do half of the things we do without him. So of course, incredibly thankful to have him as part of our lives here at Kentmorr Marina. And also I want to give a shout out to Christopher Stewart. Christopher has been a great patron that's been with us, of course, so long now, always leaving encouraging and positive comments. And the other week when I think Matt was complaining about some of his tools breaking, he went onto our Amazon wish list and just got us a ton of things that we needed for this build. So again, thank you, Christopher. So next week, I'm hoping to get the next group of patrons on, which will start filling up this wall down here. Although, to be honest, one of the other reasons I'm looking forward to filling up this wall is so that I can move to the next bulkhead area even further forward, which means I am not climbing into this every time. Yeah, see that hole? I had to jump through that to get here, but it's totally worth it because I love doing this part. So if you're interested in becoming a patron, getting your name up here on this wall, and all of the benefits that come with it, such as private access to Facebook group, early release, ad-free, make sure to check the link below and join up today.
Give me your freedom. Whoa, yeah, to pieces. Yeah, I need it. Want your pandemonium. Life is so easy. To pieces, yeah, I need it. Want your pandemonium.